Hey everybody, welcome back to Giant Talk, the world's first OKR podcast. It's Lawrence with you here, hosting once again. And this week I am delighted to be joined by Austin Kimm from Crypterium. Hey Austin.
Hey there, good to hear you.
And where are you joining us from today, Austin?
I'm in I'm just south of Edinburgh actually.
Nice, lovely part of the world.
Thank you.
And today we're going to be discussing, what to do when even OKRs aren't agile enough, which is something that Austin and Roger and I had a really interesting discussion on a couple of weeks back. That there are some industries out there that are moving so quickly that even something like a 3-month cycle can prove tricky for some companies. But let's start with you, Austin. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, really.
Okay, thank you. So right now I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Crypterium, which I'll talk about a little bit, of course, in a moment. My background is pretty much all of financial services and fintech. I started primarily in the insurance industry, and that led me to a number of strategic roles in the UK and then eventually internationally. So I was positioned out in Australia. I was running an insurance company in the Czech Republic. And my last insurance group I was running was out in Russia. I went out to Russia in 2006 to set up a life and pensions company. And then in 2012, Russia had taken enough toll on me and it was time to come back to the UK. So came back to the UK and moved space, but still with a lot of connections, of course, to the developing financial services markets.
Fantastic. So what got you into the financial industry all those years ago when you first started out in it?
Well, I mean, it was pretty much the same as everybody else. You're a student, you haven't got a clue what you want to do, and the first company that offers you a job. So, there wasn't much design to it. I'm not a lawyer by trade, but
right.
I wasn't particularly good. So, no, it was a bit lucky, actually. I think I fell into the right industry rather than by design.
Right, fell into it at the right time.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you mentioned there that you're COO at Crypterium?
Yes. So
what does Crypterium do?
Yeah, so what Crypterium does, it's a relatively new company. As you'll guess from the name Crypterium, it's connected to cryptocurrencies. So right. For those listeners who really don't follow cryptocurrency is something that was created about 10 years ago. With the founding token or currency of Bitcoin. Most people will have heard of Bitcoin now, even if they don't know what it is. And then since about 2016, there was an explosion of cryptocurrencies. So whilst people might know the name of Bitcoin, there's actually about 2,000 different cryptocurrencies out there.
Really? Wow.
And, yeah, it's a huge number. Unfortunately, most of them are junk. It's, right. I don't know, it'd be like owning the Zimbabwe currency from 20 years ago. It has zero value, unfortunately, a lot of them. But there's still a good 400 or 500 cryptocurrencies out there which have value. Right. And the role of Crypterium or the function of Crypterium was to enable people to use them in a real world environment. So you might own Bitcoin or Ethereum or Litecoin or lots of the other cryptocurrencies out there, but you couldn't actually do anything with it. So theoretically, it has a value because you can exchange it on an exchange the same way as you can exchange, say, an Apple share. It has a value, but you couldn't then go into a shop and buy something with it. Again, in the same way, you can't walk into your local Dixon's and say, "I'd like to buy a TV with some Apple shares, please." Mm-hmm. And our vision was to enable people to be able to spend their cryptocurrencies in a normal, everyday environment. It's not as easy as it sounds. And our company is one of maybe, say, 10 in the world that are trying to do this at the moment.
Okay. And how far along in the process are you?
Well, the world has moved dramatically since we first set up. So we raised our initial capital at the end of 2017. There was a huge amount of interest in what we were doing. But like everybody else at that time, we were a little bit naive to think that the rest of the financial services world was just going to allow us to do what we wanted to do.
Right.
The way of thinking of money movement is there's some very big companies out there, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, names that everybody knows. And they have spent billions of dollars building effectively a road network that allows money to travel along it. And if they don't want to use their road, then you can't get onto their roads. There's a toll system you have to pay, and that's usually the merchant or the user has to pay a percentage of whatever transactions taking place to use the roads. But they can also block you from using the roads. So when we first set up in 2017, the technology was there, but the willingness of our partner networks to allow us to use the networks was not there. So it's the best part of 2 years, let's say 18 months, to be able to launch the products we promised that we would be able to launch back at the time of the ICO. It's called an initial coin offering, when we first sold our tokens to raise the capital. So it's taken 18 months, but in that 18 months, people who follow this space will have realized that things have changed. Regulators have started to acknowledge that these currencies exist, that they do have value. Companies like the big major banks used to say it's just one big scam, but now they're all got their own departments and functions which are working in it. Visa and MasterCard, which initially said we're not going to touch it, but now have their own departments and allowing people to use networks. And of course, the most recent significant announcement was the Facebook token. And those type of things start to add credibility. So once you've got regulators, you've got Facebook, you've got Visa, you've got MasterCard, all starting to say, this could be something here that we have to either take notice of or actually get involved with. It just made our life much easier. So we are now at a stage where we can actually have proper business negotiations and arrangements and deliver what we said we would be able to deliver some 18 months ago.
Fantastic. So quite a few hurdles for you to leap over to get to this point. But
I think the biggest issue we face is this is a new initiative that wishes to be global. And I don't want to over-exaggerate the importance a cryptocurrency can have, but there hasn't been a major shake-up in money for 60, 70 years. I mean, the last significant change in money was people moving to effectively digital money by using credit cards and payment cards. But since then, there's been minor improvements where you can tap your card now on a terminal, etc. But that's more of a technological. But the actual shift of money and how people understand money hasn't really changed in 70 years. And cryptocurrency is a global phenomenon. So the price of a Bitcoin in the US is exactly the same price as a Bitcoin in Zimbabwe.
Right.
And when you start thinking that through and the implications that could have to individual nations' currencies, what that meant was effectively every single country was approaching this all with the same level of skepticism and concern, but all approaching it from a slightly different perspective. So, for example, in the USA, their immediate reaction was, well, cryptocurrency is the security. Whereas in the UK, the immediate reaction was, we're just going to watch it for a while and we're not even going to regulate it. So right now, for example, cryptocurrency in the UK is not considered anything different than, say, having a book or an iPhone or any object that is not regulated. So trying to launch something globally that is treated differently in 200 different countries is really very difficult. But the speed has been dramatic.
And I imagine that the regulation can just come in at any moment as well, and you guys have to be on the ball to react to that almost instantly.
The biggest issue with regulation is they are always behind the curve. So, and almost inevitably, they have to see if there's something that needs to be regulated before they regulate. Because, of course, there's a huge amount of effort. And the problem is they are always retrospective. So what tends to happen with regulation is, first of all, they just watch it. Some countries will just ban something. China is a perfect example. China will just say, no, it's banned. And they're not actually banning it because they think it's wrong. They just don't understand it yet. So they just ban it. And India might be the same. Then there would be a consultation paper, and the consultation paper will give some suggestions. Then there will be a recommendation paper, and then eventually there's regulation. And when the regulation comes in, it's always retrospected to some point when they would argue that based upon all the information that was available at the time, you should have known that this was the way things were going to go. So you don't just have to follow the regulations, you have to also follow all of the recommendations and discussion papers, and to be clear that you're not going to suddenly find yourself with some huge backdated penalty or even loss of, say, operating license for doing something you thought at the time was legal, but actually wasn't for reasons which you just may not have been aware of.
Sure. Crikey, what a fascinating industry.
I mean, the speed is just probably faster than any other industry, I would say, out there right today, just because, as I say, it is global, 200 different countries all looking at it at the same time. And when you've got things like Facebook saying, we're going to launch your own currency, guys, the whole world takes notice. That's 2 billion people that could own a single currency. It is a challenger to the US dollar, to the euro, to the sterling, to the yen. I mean, it is a real potential challenger. Now, at the beginning, of course, that's not what they will say that they're trying to do, but it has the potential to do that.
Of course. So, I mean, you've touched on it there, how quickly the market is moving for you guys. And interestingly enough, you're one of our first guests on the podcast that isn't really using OKRs because we have a pretty strict policy about trying to keep it as OKR-centric as possible. But we found a really interesting little angle with this conversation when me and you were chatting with Roger, didn't we, about how actually you described OKRs as not being agile enough for you guys. What did you mean by that when you said that to Roger and I?
Well, I think there's several angles to it. First of all, OKRs are clear what the deliverable is going to be. So if you say, right, I need to deliver a product marketplace in 6 months' time, and here is all of the key components that I need to deliver that, then OKRs are, a perfect tool to be able to track performance and work along what that path is. If you have something that says, we would like to deliver a product into the market if we're allowed to deliver that product, and also we're not entirely sure what that product is going to look like because it will depend on who we can partner with and what they'll let us to do. It's very different than, and also even which market we would be able to target. So you might do the traditional market research and say, right, Brazil, fantastic market. We really want to launch into Brazil, 160 million people, really looking for alternative currencies, perfect. And you could set yourself an entire goal to do that. But then halfway down that goal, you suddenly realize Visa in Brazil has a different set of rules than Visa in the USA. And Visa in Brazil just says, no, you're not working with us. We're not ready for us to work with you. So I think the key issue for us is we know what we want to deliver, but we don't know where we can deliver it to, how we can deliver it, who we can deliver it via. So we effectively try to build a core set of services and functions that we believe are the right set of services and functions, and then try and work out who we can deliver them to and how we can deliver them. And I know it sounds almost a backwards way of working, but it's the only sort of feasible way that you can operate in such a fast-moving space.
So your team at Crypterium then, are you all UK-based or is it distributed?
No, we are quite significantly distributed.
Right.
Let's say the strategic management side of Crypterium is say 70% in the UK and 30% outside the UK. So our CEO is in the UK. He's an ex-Visa CEO, for example, myself, our chief of compliance, things like that. But then when you get to the pure operations side, the product development, 90% of what cryptocurrency is effectively coding. It's right. Just hard coding. Of course, there is a few other elements to it than that, and we have effectively outsourced all of that back out to Russia, and that's my Russia connection in this work. I mean, Russia, for all the wrong reasons, unfortunately, are known as fantastic at coding and building IT programs, but also for programs like ourselves, they're also fantastic at doing this type of stuff. So we can do what we would need to do in the UK, a third of the price and probably quicker by outsourcing everything to our Russian entity.
I see, understood. So in that case, then you've got ever shifting marketplace, ever shifting regulations. different strategies and different challenges, and a distributed workforce. How as a leadership team do you manage to set and execute any goals?
Yeah, actually, I think also an important ingredient in that is the cultural differences between different teams. So there is a particular way of doing things in the UK and a particular way of doing things in Russia. And my experiences, as I said, for example, I ran a large insurance group in Russia, which had about 3,000 employees. And if I was being very simple about it, the Russian mentality is very much, we'll build it and then to some degree fix the problems later. Whereas a UK approach would be very much more, let's plan through every single stage. Let's make sure we've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's, and then we go off and build it. And we've got to find somewhere in the middle, because the benefit of the let's say, the cultural approach that you would get in Russia is, whilst the Brits are working out what to do, the Russians built it. But then the downside of that is they've built it perhaps not having the key components. Now, I'm being very simplistic here about different cultures. I'm not saying that's exactly how our company operates, but it is a feature of different ways of thinking. So we have to try and find a common ground, because you don't want a sort of, let's say, a strategy side of the equation, which is coming out of the UK, constantly saying, let's have another workshop, let's model this, and let's model that, whilst the Russians are chomping at the bit to say, but we're ready to build it, let's go off and build the damn thing. So, the only way, therefore, to do that, to have that cultural mix, is regular meetings. I mean, video meetings that we're using Zoom right now, and things like Zoom, our business model, we have to have daily, what the Russian team like to call them Scrum meetings, using the project management tools that they use. But a simpler way is just saying, it's a daily delivery meeting of what are we trying to do today, what's our key objectives, what's the problems today, and trying to make certain that we're staying on path. And then just one other difference of approach would be the fact that if the team that is building everything is not physically with the management every single day, there is, greater risk that you go off in different directions. One side thinks you're doing one thing, and the other side came across a roadblock, thought the roadblock's not so important to come back to a strategy meeting, we'll just go around the roadblock our own way. And before you know it, you're actually going slightly different directions. So I think it sounds very simplistic, but the only way to do it is through a daily, I'd love to say it's daily, but let's say 3 times a week, we spend an hour and a half together making sure that we go through those issues.
But how many people are you getting on those video calls?
Well, I would say it's the key members of the team. So your head of product, your head of compliance, your head of strategy. But we don't do it in such a way that the meeting doesn't start if not everyone's arrived. It's a meeting. It's in the diary. It's the same schedule every single days of the week, and people come in and out as is important. And through that approach, sometimes you might have a meeting where there's only 4 people on the call. But that call has to be a specific discussion about compliance, so the product team knows it's not an issue. But as long as they're turning up on a regular basis, that approach sort of tends to work. The only downside is you sometimes repeat yourself, because you say, well, you weren't at the last meeting, this is what we agreed. It's a price to pay. We don't bother with complicated minutes every single meeting, because if you're having them practically every day, you don't need minutes. But it would be. It still would have been a good thing sometimes in the past to say, "What did we say 2 weeks ago?" So mistakes, but I think that's the approach we would still continue with until we get to a point where you can say, "Well, it's quite clear now what's going on in Brazil. We do have a partner now. We know exactly what we want to do, and here's the key deliverables that we're going to work with."
So it's a pretty back to basics approach then, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is. I would say, for a company that is effectively 70 employees, you would look at us and say, are you really running that the way you run it? But we're not quite sure a more formal. I mean, we've tried. Let's say, here's a full set of key deliverables for various departments. and then at the end of each month reviewing those deliverables. But before we got to the end of the month, we realized those deliverables had actually changed during the month, and we'd spend more time trying to change people's deliverables than actually delivering.
So, I mean, I guess the summary of this for the people listening is that there can be instances out there where you have highly distributed teams in different cultures with different work environments and different work background and experiences in a market that is moving and changing so quickly that the only way to really overcome those challenges is to bring it back down to earth and just make sure you're having those regular conversations and regular meetings with your team.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you just think about who are Stephen Parker's Visa. Visa work with OKRs every single day of the week, and it's inbuilt in our culture and how we would do things. But we just quickly realized that it just trying to be rigid and say, you've got a deliverable here for 3 months. Within that 3 months, so much change that you end up spending more time trying to change your OKR than you are trying to actually deliver. So,
sure.
Yeah, I think in that environment, you just have to go back to basics. And back to basics doesn't mean just let everyone get on and do what they want to do. Back to basics, you just have to have a format and a process by which the old-fashioned, let's sit around the table and talk about things, even if it's through a Zoom or a webinar or something, and do it that way. And that's how we've operated now, we think reasonably successfully for almost 12 months.
Yeah, and and it doesn't mean there's no strategy. It doesn't mean there's no mission, vision, values. It's just a different way of operating and a sort of more grounded way of operating, I suppose. What sort of
one more thing to add is because of the nature of our business, probably more reactive as well than maybe some businesses would be. So if you're building, a new airliner. It's a 10-year airline, and you've pretty much got your own vision from start to finish. And just because somebody else launched a new airliner 2 weeks ago, doesn't mean you change the design of your own airliner. But with cryptocurrency, suddenly someone up in the United States or in South America and say, that was a pretty good idea what they've done here. How do we integrate that within ours? So you may have a strategy and a vision and a mission statement, but even they change depending on how the market is moving.
Yeah. Oh, it is really interesting. So what does the future look like then for cryptocurrency and for Crypterium more specifically?
Well, I would say the future for cryptocurrency is the cryptocurrency will become a main part of money management in the future. It might take 3-4 years, it might take 10 years, but there's no going back now. There is too much. There are too many big organizations involved, and once the city banks and everybody start dealing with cryptocurrency is a part of the future. And I think the mums and dads and the people who don't understand it today, they will start to earn cryptocurrency through being members of Facebook or selling through eBay or whatever it is. It will become a mainstream.
Yeah.
And once it becomes mainstream, so do management principles. And once something becomes mainstream, it becomes regulated in a mainstream way. And so I would say that for Crypterium, it is still, we are hopefully going to be one of the leaders in the world for cryptocurrency and how people can use it. But there are so many companies with that sort of similar vision that it will be through our operational ability that will determine probably who is the successful players. Now, we plan to be number one. I mean, who is the world's biggest bank? HSBC, probably. Maybe there's bigger banks, I don't know, but let's say it's HSBC. But there's probably another 10,000 banks that you said, well, if we were as big as that bank, we'd be doing quite well. Yeah. And so for us, there's maybe 10 cryptocurrency providers. Cryptocurrency becomes a mainstream income. We don't have to be number one. We just need to be significant and relevant. And if someone suddenly says, oh, they're doing really well in the United States, great. That's great. The more, the merrier. So I see us being a top 15, top 20 player, but we don't have that sort of striking goal that says we have to be number one. Because number 1 and number 15 will still be very, very significant.
Sure. Yeah. And I think the techniques that get you to number 15 aren't going to be too dissimilar to the strategy management techniques that get you to number 1. I think a lot of that comes down to a bit of luck and being there at the right time, which it sounds like you guys are going to be.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of luck, and also just the reaction of a particular regulator. So let's say, for sake of argument, we put all our energies into Europe, and Europe then came up with a regulation that said, you can't do this, guys. Then that knocks you back 3 years. So there is a little bit of luck to it. You might say, well, we're going to do it all in India, and India just then outlaws it. Mm-hmm. You have to put a lot of pins in a map rather than just one pin.
Right.
Strategies, and try and run with the strategy you think that is going to work the best. But you might get it a little bit wrong. And you have to be able to realize quite quickly that actually that path's the wrong path, let's jump to a different path, which again doesn't sound like business management, but I think that's the only way you can work in something moving so fast.
Yeah, being able to pivot that quickly.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Austin, thank you so much for joining us for the podcast. It's fascinating. I have realized that I know nothing about cryptocurrencies whilst talking to you, which is good because it gives me something to go away and learn about. And where, if people are interested in chatting to you about this a little bit more, are you on LinkedIn, I take it?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn, just under my normal name, Austin Kimm. Kim's got 2 M's. They can also, more than happy for them to contact me at my Crypterium email address. So Crypterium.com is the website, and my name at Crypterium.com, or Kim at Crypterium.com if anybody wants to catch hold of me.
Fantastic. To all the listeners, thank you so much for joining us again for a slightly different episode this time, I suppose. It wasn't quite as down and dirty in the world of OKRs as we usually are. But I think a really interesting take, because we do get questions from you guys quite a lot saying, OKRs aren't always agile enough. And whilst we can alter things with OKRs and we can alter the drumbeat of the organization, sometimes back to basics will work for these really quick changing industries. So I hope you've all taken something from it. Make sure you join in the conversation on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever you see our posts. And let us know if there's anything that you'd like us to discuss in the future. But until then, I'll speak to you next time. Cheers. Bye.